Well, good morning. Good to have you back on the Steve Gruber Show. So much to cover of this short month of February, but really not that short when you think of all the things that have been done by this administration. Good Lord. We're here to fight for America every single day, give you better analysis than anyone else, and make sure you're on the forefront of making America great again. Three big things to know this hour. Number one, the governor of Wisconsin actually defending the idea of calling mothers inseminated persons. Yeah, this is about as deranged as it gets, and it could cost them the majority in the state Supreme Court. We'll tell you about that. Number two, the House was close to making a deal on the budget and the Trump agenda. Then they weren't, then they were again. They got it done. The big, beautiful budget is through, 217, 215. And number three, another very busy day for President Trump, delivering everything he could again on his promises from the campaign and more. As I said, February is a short month, right? February is a short month. But you wouldn't know that by the way that Donald Trump moves 26 days in. This is the most amazing series of events over the last, he's been in office, 4 weeks, 4.5 weeks? Been amazing as he hammers away at getting the things done he has promised and also taking time to even some political scores. What do I mean by that? Well, here, President Trump celebrated stripping Jack Smith and others of all security clearances. Listen to this.
At the outset of your administration, sir, you committed to ending the weaponization of government, to holding those accountable who participated in the weaponization of government.
Hold it. This is a good one. Is everybody listening? Deranged Jack Smith. We're going to call it the Deranged Jack Smith signing or bill. Go ahead.
One law firm that provided pro bono legal services to the special counsel's office under Jack Smith's leadership was Covington and Burling. As a result of those actions, we're now going to be suspending and putting under review the security clearances for the attorneys and employees at that firm who worked with Jack Smith's team. And we're going to continue holding the people who were responsible for the weaponization of government, who supported it, accountable for what they did.
And you'll be doing this with other firms as time goes by, right?
We're looking at sort of the whole panoply of options.
The weaponization of our system by law firms, even pro bono work they're doing just in order to clog up government, stop government. And nobody knows about it more than me. And hopefully that'll never happen again.
So the Covington and Burlington?
Covington and Burlington.
Mr. President, may I ask you a question about Europe? So long term, do you plan to maintain the number of U.S. troops stationed?
Wait, I just want to savor this one, please. Who would like this pen? Hey, why don't you send it to Jack Smith? A deranged person.
And he tosses the pen to somebody off camera. Hey, send this to Jack Smith. The president enjoying that one. Now, this is just the latest round of security clearances getting canceled, pulled, deplatformed. And I dare say it will not be the last. The president has the right to take the clearances, and he is making it happen. It began on January 20th when he canceled the clearances of all 51 members of the so-called intelligence community that lied about the Hunter Biden laptop and its authenticity. That included former CIA Director John Brennan and former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, both blocked out. A couple days later, he ripped the clearance of former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and since then, it's been a number of others, including the former chair of the Joint Chiefs, General Mark Milley, former Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, New York Attorney General Letitia James, former NSA Jake Sullivan, and the list goes on. Look, he says if you can't be trusted, you can't be trusted. And if you can't be trusted, you can't have security clearance in this country. But this is another busy day. This happened last night. All of these things happened late yesterday afternoon, early evening, right? The president focusing on so many priorities, including reducing the price of medical care in the country, especially for those that can least afford it. Price transparency in health care, front and center for President Trump, along with so much else. Listen to this.
We have an executive order for your attention. In 2019, during your previous administration, you imposed price transparency requirements on the healthcare industry. This was a significant driver in lowering the costs of healthcare during your first administration. Those requirements were largely reversed by the Biden administration. Now we're reinstating
Or terminated, right?
Terminated. We're strengthening them. The idea is to make price transparency a key aspect of healthcare policy in America.
It's one of the biggest things that can happen to reducing cost in healthcare. It takes a little while to kick in, but Biden ended it immediately upon coming in, which was a terrible travesty, in my opinion, and we're going to start it up, and we've actually made it even stronger.
Yes, sir.
By a couple of major factors, right? Anybody have any question on price transparency? It allows people to go out and negotiate and price, and you're not allowed to even talk about it when you go into a hospital or see a doctor, and this allows you to go out and talk about it.
Yeah, this allows you to go out and talk about it. Look, I never understood this. You go into a hospital, I've discussed this at length. And it's not just that there are different prices. There could be 100 different prices for the same procedure. Look, an MRI costs what an MRI costs, right? It doesn't cost $100 because you have this job, or $1,000 because you have that job, or $10,000 because you have no job at all. It costs what it costs. But these insurance companies, these conglomerate hospital organizations, all have deals. All right, we're going to give you a deal. We're going to make a PPO deal with you, so it's, you know, one of these healthcare plans, and it'll include this, but won't include that. Look, it costs what it costs. And to stick people that have no job and no insurance with the highest cost on the scale seems unconscionable, right? And so what he's doing there, I think, is very important. It's protecting you, the American consumer, from predatory pricing when you're sick. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in the healthcare sector of this country, but that's a pretty good step. Remember, Donald Trump lowered the price of insulin when he was in the White House. Joe Biden removed that and then put it back and claimed that he had done the same thing when it had already been done. This is not Donald Trump trying to play games with anybody. He's just saying, look, we need to have transparency in pricing so that when you go to the hospital, if you say, look, let me negotiate with you. Let's talk about this price of $1,000 on this procedure. Let's have a conversation about that. That is so incredibly important. And it empowers the consumer to know what is real. I mean, how do you know what you're paying at the hospital? You bust your leg. You go into the ER. And trust me, this is something I would do, right? I've busted all sorts of bones. You go to the ER. All right, so look, if you take your car to the repair shop, I just did this last week, the upfront charge was like $175. I about choked. They said, well, that's your diagnostics fee back at the dealership. I'm like, really? $175? Yeah. But time is money, and that's what it costs them. They figured it takes 2 hours to work on your vehicle at a minimum, so that's where you go. So if you go into the hospital, the ER, should there be a diagnostics fee? Minimum here, you got to pay $500, whatever it is. But you know what the price is then. You're not guessing. You walk in, okay, it's diagnostic $500. This test is $1,000. That test is $1,500. Whatever. Okay, my insurance is going to cover 80%. My insurance is going to cover half. Whatever it's going to be. Wouldn't it be nice to know up front what the cost of medical care is truly going to be? Yeah, wouldn't that be something? Anyhow, we've got more big victories and more executive orders and more conversation after this. Good morning. It's the Steve Gruber Show. I'm glad you're along for the ride. All right, back at it now. From healthcare to the economy and defending American industries and workers from being flooded by foreign imports of natural resources. That was next on Donald Trump's list, especially the resources that we have in spades. It was a busy night again. Look, this is February, and he just keeps nailing it. Another EO focused on American copper. This one is the copper industry, which, you know, here in Michigan is pretty important. At least it used to be. Here it is.
Copper is a critical material, and the supply of copper is vital to our national security. In recent years, we've dealt with a significant issue of the dumping of foreign copper into the American market. That significantly impacted the domestic production and manufacture of copper and copper materials. This executive order charges your Secretary of Commerce with starting the process to potentially impose tariffs or other trade barriers to prevent this ongoing dumping of copper and to protect the American manufacture and production of copper.
It will have a big impact. Howard, do you want to say something about that?
You mind if I read one of your truths?
Please.
So this is a truth that's about to go out. Like our steel and aluminum industries, our great American copper industry has been decimated by global actors attacking our domestic production. To build back our copper industry, I have requested my Secretary of Commerce and USTR to study copper imports and end unfair trade, putting Americans out of work. Tariffs will help rebuild back our American copper industry and strengthen our national defense. American industries depend on copper, and they should be made in America. No exemptions, no exceptions. America first creates American jobs and protects our national security. It's time for copper to come home.
There's Howard Lutnick, your Commerce Secretary, billionaire, who lost 2/3 of his employees in the 9/11 attacks of 2001. Anyhow, Howard Lutnick saying, look, we need to bring copper home like everything else. Tariffs could be on the way. We could see a spike in copper prices, but stop dumping it in America for cheap and destroying our industries. And while we're on this topic of natural resources, you've certainly heard about the deal to gain control of natural resources in Ukraine for the benefit of America, for you. After we spent hundreds of billions of dollars in the war with Russia, well, just a couple of days ago we were told that Ukraine was not going to agree to anything of the sort. Well, that's changed. Yeah, that's changed. Ukrainian President Zelensky coming to America to sign the deal that will turn over billions of dollars worth of natural resources to the United States. Here that is.
True that President Zelensky is coming on Friday to meet with you, and is the mineral deal sorted out? Is it done?
I hear that. I hear that he's coming on Friday. Certainly, it's okay with me if he'd like to, and he would like to sign it together with me, and I understand that's a big deal, very big deal. And I think the American people, even if you look at polling, they're very happy because, you know, Biden was throwing money around like it's cotton candy, and it's a very big deal. Look, it could be $1 trillion deal, it could be whatever, but it's rare earths and other things. And look, we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars on Ukraine and Russia fighting a war that should have never, ever happened. That's a war that would have never happened if I were president. And it didn't happen for 4 years. People say, how do we know that it didn't happen for 4 years? Would have never happened. And nevertheless, this guy went into this situation and he spent money like nobody's ever seen, $350 billion. The other thing that we don't like is that Europe has spent $100 billion. We've spent $350 billion. Europe gets their money back because they spent it in the form of a loan, and we just gave them, whether it's 300 or 350 billion, nobody really knows. They can't even tell me the answer to that. It means probably more than that.
Nobody knows.
So what we're doing is now we're saying, look, we want to be secured. We want to get that money back. We're helping a country through a very, very big problem, a problem like very few people have had. Shouldn't have had this problem because it shouldn't have happened, but it did happen, so we have to straighten it out. But the American taxpayer now is going to get their money back plus.
Yeah. Meanwhile, new polling from companies that can be trusted show President Trump winning. Mark Mitchell and Rasmussen keep showing the president doing very well. And that seems to be the case because some other polls are showing the very same thing. I spoke to Mark Mitchell at length at CPAC this past weekend. Man, is he on it. But here's Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming, slamming down the Democrats, claiming Donald Trump's policies are not popular. Not popular? Well, he corrects Chuck Schumer. Here he is.
Having listened to the minority leader, there's something to the effect that
Republicans are focused on things that Americans either don't like or don't care about.
And as he was saying this, I recalled a Harvard-Harris poll conducted just this past week. Trump's policies, huge popularity. Deportation of illegal immigrants who've committed crimes. 81% of the American people, and that includes a lot of Democrats, say that is a very popular position and now being enforced by President Trump. Eliminating fraud and waste in government expenditures. 76% of Americans agree. What have we seen happen with DOGE? What we have seen is actually pointing out fraud and waste in government. The American people are supportive. And then, of course, closing the border. Again, 76% of Americans support what President Trump is doing. Promises that he made prior to the election, promises kept now that he's in the White House.
That's right. But what about the folks out there? What about the folks that voted for Donald Trump? What do they think? Huh? What do they think? Black voters may never come back to the Democrats after what has happened. Listen to this real quick.
I voted for Democrats my whole life. They never did anything they promised. They would come to the black church and sing some Negro spirituals with us and then disappear, peer. Once they got our vote, they never did anything they promised. I vote for a Republican once in my life, and this dude done did everything he promised on steroids. He ain't even been in office 2 months, and everything I voted for, I'm getting. It's amazing. Do he sleep? Like this dude, if he sleeps, he wake up on a mission to do what Nakia voted for. He said, Nakia want me to fix that border? I'm on it. Nakia want to make sure them tax dollars is being spent for Americans more than anybody
He
else.
doing it for you,
I'm
honey.
on it. Like,
He doing it for you and every other member of the 77 million. She's cute. Nikita wants this to give her. Donald Trump's giving it to her. I'll be right back. It's the Steve Gruber Show.